What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the Blue River Bow Hunting Podcast, episode 55. This week I got a real special guest on with me, Brad Luttrell, the man from behind all the GoWild stuff. What's going on, buddy?
What's up, buddy? Thanks for having me on here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, appreciate you taking time out of your, I'm sure, very busy schedule to get on here and talk a little deer hunting, a little bow hunting, a little everything, sounds like.
Yeah, man, it is busy right now, but this is the fun stuff to getting to take a break from all the trade show travel. Kind of got a down week this week, so good to get back to some of the fun stuff, which is talking to guys like you.
Absolutely. Well, for somebody that doesn't know you, Brad, introduce yourself a little bit.
Yeah, so I'm Brad Luttrell. I'm the co-founder and CEO of GoWild. I grew up in southeastern Kentucky. Grew up, it's in the heart of Appalachia, and grew up hunting and fishing, but really didn't get into like big game like whitetail until I was an adult. So, grew up shooting squirrels, catching bluegill and bass with my dad. We like to camp and all that good stuff. And then, I ended up going to University of Kentucky, got a journalism degree. I did the journalism thing for a while. And at some point after having gone through college and been out of just like not as active in the outdoors, really started trying to get not back into it, not just back into it, but get better. I really got interested in whitetail.
Mm-hmm.
And so I spent like four years or so doing that, and it was just mind-boggling to me of how much there is to learn, because I was coming at it really new. My dad didn't know anything about whitetail hunting. And so that really kicked off, I guess, a lot of what we might end up talking about here is just how like not knowing was actually the emphasis for starting GoWild. A lot of people think I was this great hunter. People that just meet me, they're like, man, you must have just loved hunting and been super good and killed elk and, all this crazy stuff. And I'm like, man, I didn't know anything. That was the problem, right? Like I was trying to find a way to learn better. But yeah, that's kind of the background and the gist of it. There's no crazy like upbringing or anything. I didn't like grow up hunting in Africa or something. It's just good old squirrels and lake fishing growing up.
Yeah, that part of Kentucky is awesome, man. I actually own some property in
Do you?
Wayne County.
Okay.
It's right on Wayne-Pulaski line. I grew up. My grandparents are from down there. All my in-laws on my dad's side are from down there in southeastern Kentucky, and it's pretty cool to talk to you because I know you have a lot of pride and stuff when it comes to everything going on down there with music and everything else that comes with that.
Oh man, I love the music scene. One of my favorite events of the year is the Laurel Cove Music Festival, which is, it's like 1,000 people go to this thing, but it feels so small, and it's right there in the heart of the Mountain Laurel. That's what it's named after. It's in the White Rocks that you'll often see down that way. But dude, there's something special about Appalachia, and I don't know, maybe I'm just kind of in love with it because I grew up there. My family's been there for hundreds of years. But what was cool is like even seeing how similar it is. I did that bear hunt in December and got to go up into Virginia with those guys, and that's hours from where I grew up, but it felt like home, man. Like it's all just like good old people who their bloodlines have lived there for forever. And so there's something special about not having that outside influence like you get into with the city. A lot of those cities look the same that they did 100 years ago, and some people would rag on that, but I think it makes them kind of special.
No, absolutely, for sure. And I've told this to people before, and they didn't really believe me, but like the deer heritage down there was so thick when I would go down there to hunt and stuff. I would ask other people's permission to get on their places, and everybody, when it came to turkey hunting, didn't care. Go shoot them all, shoot as many as you want. If you ask some people to, deer hunt their place, it's like trying to sleep with their wife or something. Like they're gonna kill you over it.
Yeah, dude, I didn't know anything about turkey hunting, and I really had never met anybody that turkey hunted as a kid. None of my family did it. None of them. Now they've kind of gotten into it, and I think it's gotten more popular with specifically my family there. And there's obviously turkey hunters there, but you're dead on in that like people, it's whitetail. But what's also funny is that it's whitetail, but as you know, that population in the eastern part of Kentucky is just a lot different than the western part too. Up here, like I have deer sometimes in my backyard, and I technically live in the city of Louisville. I'm on the outskirts, but they're everywhere, and we can shoot just unlimited does, right? Like unlimited. It's crazy. And then you go to the eastern part of the state, and it's much stricter on the doe take, and it's a totally different zone. And it's amazing how 120 miles makes that much of a difference, but it really does. Those mountain deer are a lot different than what we have here.
Oh, absolutely. And we'll get into some of that when we talk some whitetails. I want to kind of know how all that works on that in the mountainous settings. I've never really deer hunted much down there. I've turkey hunted a lot down there, but your deer, what you're going to do behind your whitetail tactics is going to be a whole lot different than what I'm doing here in just East Central Indiana, and it's really not even that far. Just because I'm in kind of the farm flat stuff and all that rolling hills down there can make a another ball game for whitetails.
Yeah, and honestly, man, I wouldn't even say I'm that good at it. What's kind of funny is I've killed some bucks down there, and I spent my first like full season scouting down there. Well, three I had like 3 seasons before I found a Go Wild that I'd scouted down there. It's tough. It's a lot of public pressure. I public land hunted a little bit this year down there. I did 2 full days down there. And with archery season, and it was like maybe 2 weeks before Modern Gun opened up. I feel like that's honestly your best shot at finding them. The Orange Army shows up, and there's so much public land access with good roads down there because a lot of it's on abandoned strip mines, and you could. I mean, I was driving miles on top of these strip mines without just in my normal everyday SUV, and it makes like that easy access makes it to where like you'll show up on opening day of gun like I've done before, and I mean you might get run over. There's so many people driving through, and that part of it makes it really challenging. The deer get really pressured. It's a smaller population anyways, and from people I've talked to get to like a big buck, and there are big bucks in Eastern Kentucky, but dude, they are living. I mean, they are remote. You're going to be hiking. They live in thick stuff, dude. Too. It's like the thicker the better. You want to be in Laurel, like to where you can barely see to shoot. It's almost like you have to archery hunt them. From the people I've talked to, again, I haven't like pulled any freaks out of there. I feel like I've almost like honed my skills more up here, closer to Louisville, which is a different ball game altogether. But it's a lot of some of the public land down there. You're talking 50,000 acres of public, but it's difficult to get a quarter mile from a road because these logging roads overlap so much. Logging or coal mining roads will overlap so much that everything's accessible. I hiked or I walked a spot this year, scouted it on a map the night before. It was a new spot I'd never been up to, and picked a spot I wanted to go to. I was like, I don't know. This feels like a good spot. It feels like the Bucks would be traveling through here for a couple different reasons. And went in, set up, and I ended up was right on a buck. I could smell a buck when I was sitting there and the wind was blowing just right. And
Wow.
I got up and walked around, and there was a buck bed 10 yards behind me up the hill. But the problem, like I was 200 yards from a road this way, 100 yards behind me was a road, and 100 yards below that was another road. So like hunters can just tear through here, and it seems like in gun season especially it just becomes a whole new challenge, which I know you do a lot of bow hunting. I'm kind of thinking this year on that spot I had a lot of good deer sign that time. Like it was clear there's a good population of bucks in there, so I think like if you're going to do that, the archery is the key, like kind of sneaking in right in that late October, a little bit of pre-rut activity, but their guard's still a little bit down. That's like if I were going to build a whole game plan, I would be building around that late October timeframe. And then you're not as worried about access, because I feel like just simple recreational vehicles is a little different than hunters coming in and busting up. They're
Right.
probably a little more used to that. But dude, this year, just as a side story, it's a small story, but I've lived down there. We lived there in high school, or I guess it might have been middle school when they brought the elk back.
Mm-hmm.
And that first 100 that they brought back, and Bell County was one of the first counties they brought them in, where I grew up, and I was born in Harley and grew up in Bell. And I've looked for my whole life to see an elk. I just like my parents see them all the time. My dad's an insurance agent, and people hit them with cars like they're a nuisance. And I've still yet to see one. And this year, I finally saw my first public land elk in Kentucky. With all my trying, I saw it up on a strip mine, and I mean, it's so cool, dude. 2,000 yards away, and I could see this thing. And it was cool because I could watch it, and I watched it. I quit hunting. I just watched the elk for 30 minutes.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really cool. It was like a big. It's kind of a dumb thing, like it's a dumb milestone because I didn't have elk tags are impossible to get here. I always try, but
Me too.
it was just a big cow too. It was like I just thought it was so cool because I've lived it. I've seen where we had none, and they brought them back, and now that we have the healthiest population east of the Mississippi of elk now, and it's a really cool comeback story.
That's awesome. Yeah, this was my first year diving into Kentucky deer hunting. I went with a group of guys. This was their 11th year going. They go the archery opener Labor Day weekend down there, northern Kentucky. The place they took me was a bow only. It gets one gun hunt a year. It's a drawed out system there somehow. But we went for the opener. And wow, that just being in a deer woods that early for me was a lot different for me. It was so hot. We had some weather in the area and made it rainy and wet and just really hot down there. But I would love to go back down there in October, November window, kind of like you're talking. But it's just so hard to get away from home hunting then because I'm so zoned in on a couple of these properties I have here. It's hard for me to get away.
Oh, I get it, man. I think Northern Kentucky is still zone 2. That population's quite a bit different than what we're talking about of the Appalachian. That's zone 4, if I remember correctly. But I'm with you. Like I never hunt September. I do eventually want to get a velvet buck. I think that'd be really cool.
Yeah.
Kentucky's one of the best states to do it because we open up with dove season. It's
Right.
crazy.
Oh
You
yeah, we
know?
heard them when we were
Oh
in the
yeah.
stand. The boo 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 boo.
Oh
They were
yeah,
going crazy.
you were yeah. If you were in Northern Kentucky, it's a good spot for dove hunting. I would say because you get one cornfield cut, and it's like that's where they're going to go to eat. Versus like I've dove hunted a bunch down near Bardstown, like the Laredo area, and there's corn everywhere, and like it kind of depends on how when that neighbor corn gets cut because if food sources are everywhere, it can be a little tough. But I bet up there, it's a little more patchy, and so if you're on a good food source near or have a good food source nearby, you could tear it up on the doves.
Oh, they had like fields planted and whole areas designated for it. They couldn't come into a certain time, I think it was though, because it wasn't like right off the bat in the morning. It seemed like they took dove hunting pretty serious down there compared to here. I mean, we go put on basketball shorts and a cutoff and sit in a bucket on the corn edge and start shooting some. These guys were all decked out.
Yeah, dude, it varies. I do think on opening morning, I think opening day on Labor Day weekend, you can't shoot until like 11 or noon or something. It's not a first light.
Right.
And I can't remember. I don't even remember if you can hunt in the morning throughout the season. I guess you can, but we never do. We always go in at lunchtime
Right.
and hunt them on really that like last 3 hours is when they pick up. But we're kind of like you. It's like jeans and a camo shirt,
Right.
like t-shirt, and people are just kind of hanging out on a corn row.
Right. So, how did you get started in hunting in general? Who got you into hunting?
My dad. So my dad grew up squirrel hunting. I was probably 12 when he first took me, and thought it was really fun. And it's just like getting to spend time with him, doing something new. Like before we went out, he taught me how to shoot a 410. I've been shooting. I'm still not like super proficient, I would say, compared to a lot of the GoWild members I know and have got to meet. But started shooting. My papa handed me like 38 special at 6 years old. And he's like, "Here, try this on for size." And then my ears ring for a week after that. But got into small game, and I would just say it was probably casual. Like at best. That Dad, we didn't really have a spot, so Dad would go like when he had somebody that was like, "Oh yeah, you can come to my place and hunt this weekend." And we would do that every now and then, but it wasn't a lot. Like really diving into hunting was more of my own personal pursuit after college. My sister and I, for like even through college, that was kind of our thing. We would for day of Thanksgiving, we'd go on a squirrel hunt, and we started doing that for years, and really have only stopped doing that the last couple of years just because we both got kids now and it gets a little tougher, and you kind of feel bad leaving everybody with your kids, and I got a whole mess of kids now, so you always feel even worse. Squirrel hunting was always just what we did. It was fun. It's casual. It's kind of like a little bit more elevated than dove hunting, like you were talking about. Like you're not going to wear basketball shorts, but what I love about it is if you screw up, you just sit down and wait 10 minutes and they're back. Right. So, but that was really the gateway drug to it for me. But then when I realized, I just hadn't really, my cousins grew up hunting whitetail, and they would bring bucks back. I always thought it was cool, but I just never realized how much there was to it. I think anybody that's not done it thinks you just go out and sit and get lucky a deer passes by, and you and I know, like, yeah, that might happen. There might be a passerby buck that you haven't seen around that area before, but generally they're very territorial. They're like, it takes a long time to figure out where they are. And even if you got 80 acres, they may only be really active on like 4 or 5 of those acres. Right. Like, I just didn't know any of that. And I had a guy I was hunting with for a while, was hunting his property, and then when I couldn't hunt with him anymore, that's where I got a cold hard introduction for a couple of years of trying to do it on public, and I'm like, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't know
What do
what
you
I'm
think your biggest mistake was then, kind of out on your own, looking back on it now?
not understanding pressure enough. I think I would just access. I'm like easy access. I'm gonna go park my 4-wheeler here and walk 300 yards that way, and like maybe a deer will come by. No idea what I was looking for. I would just try to get in areas where I'm like, yeah, I can see a lot of things. And you and I know, like now, I'm like, yeah, that may not be the best spot because the deer doesn't like they like walking through all that protection and being covered up in brush, and it's just not like it's not very often they're out in the open. It's like feeding. Now I know that like they're only doing that really when they're feeding and maybe passing by. But when you're dumb and don't know any of this stuff, you just think like, oh, deer just hang out in the woods, so I'll just go sit in the woods, right? And so really trying to, even with my scouting, trying to scout on public land, finding, it took me several years to understand, because and this is all leading up to the foundation of GoWild, of several years to understand that deer that you see on camera early season aren't going to be there late season, right? Like
Nope.
that took me a long time to understand that. And I think like in some ways technology is almost a hindrance to success, because you can see that something was there when you weren't. Like I had a whole season where I got access to 660 acres in Eastern Kentucky, and I thought I was the king, right? And I had a
Right.
big freaking deer showing up, like one of those nice bucks you got behind you there. This thing had 11 points. His G2s were just ginormous, and I'm like, dude, I'm gonna kill a deer of a lifetime for me. I did the whole thing and naming him Mr. Tall Tines, and I'm sitting there watching this deer's coming through every 3 days, and I'm like, oh, it's on like Donkey Kong. I go in there for opening day. I set up. I hunt the hardest I've ever hunted. Like long, I'd never done full day sits until that day. Well, no, that's not true. But first, I would say first multiple full day sits. I did a whole weekend, and I think I even had taken off an extra day to get the day after, a Monday or something. And I ended up talking to the property manager who didn't even hunt, and he's like, "Oh yeah, the deer aren't here anymore."
Oh,
And
man.
it was a non-hunter that told me this. He's like, "Yeah, I don't know what it is, but late season they just aren't here anymore. They go up the mountain. You're in the wrong spot." And I'm like, "Oh my god, I just spent 36 hours hunting hard as I could, and for nothing, right?" And so uh, the series of these combinations of like I gotta find people that are local, because I would do research and I would end up reading a forum for 30 minutes, and I'm like, oh my god, they're talking about deer and cacti. This is Texas, or it's mule deer, and it's like
Right.
it's like now podcasts and YouTube have kind of changed some of that.
Hmm.
I can dial into someone like you that hunts in my area, or a Parker McDonald in Alabama, and I can really hear from somebody local. This is 2017, and I know that doesn't sound that long ago, but you got like even the hunting public wasn't
Right.
blowing. It's like you didn't have the resources. It was like Meat Eater, and they're talking about brown bear hunting.
Hmm.
I just couldn't find the resources. So that's really what inspired founding the platform. Is like I want a place where I can dial into what I want to do, so deer hunting for example, and then find locals that do it. And I think if you fast forward to us now, this year will be 6 years since the first launch of the app, and I think we do that better than anybody. And I mean, I would say that, but
Absolutely.
I just, the near me feature on GoWild is awesome. The rut starts coming in, and I love hitting that button on the deer trail, and just like I can see everybody that's in 150 miles of me or in my state, and it's like, oh, dude, all these guys are talking about the rut, and it's like it's on this weekend, and
Oh, absolutely.
it's such a cool tool. But I'm kind of jumping ahead. But yeah,
No, you're fine.
that's really like the gateway into it for me, was just self trying to figure it out.
I wish I'm kind of in the same boat as you. I kind of wish there was something to go back on. Then I feel like when I first started hunting and getting deep into whitetails, all we had was really the outdoor channel and stuff like that. I mean, there was people on YouTube and certain shows like Primos and that kind of stuff. It kind of wasn't always on TV. You could get DVDs at Walmart and that kind of thing. But now with so many content creators and stuff like that, and like you said, even local guys like me, where a lot of local people are listening. Maybe I don't get a lot of people from California or something like that, but I wish I had more back then, man. I leaned a
Yeah.
lot on the older people around me that had been doing it forever. And I think the biggest mistake I made back then when I first started whitetail hunting, I wasn't reading the sign well enough. I was too scared to go into a place and walk around and check for everything instead of just sneaking in, sitting in the same old spot every time where I thought there was gonna be deer, and then maybe not seeing the deer for a couple hunts, and then oh, they're over there. Maybe one day I'll move a stand over there, and it's like you get to a point when you're like, all right, I've had enough of this. I've seen stuff over here. I'm gonna go. I think I learned that best from my neighbor Adam, who hunts with us a lot. He just showed me how to go into a spot and absolutely search it from bottom to every little thing and notice every little detail of that. Or when you're checking trail camera pictures, really look at your pictures. You may have a buck standing there and it's like, well, I wonder where he came from. You can't really tell. And then he's got mud from the top of his legs down. It's like, well, he's coming through a swamp. What I mean? He's got mud all over him. Just the smallest detail of checking, everything in a whitetail world, and then finally connecting the dots. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and that's a lot of what's cool about the platform is you can learn from people will log a trail cam photo and they'll talk about it. They'll have a question about it, and you'll get 30 people talking about what they think is going on. But even going back to some of the problems, I would go out and buy the deer hunting magazines that come out, starting every year, and I was so dumb. I'm like, it's like play the wind, and I'm like, I don't know what that means. Like, I understand that deer can smell, but how do I set up to account for that? How do I hang deer? They talk about deer pee, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with it. It's like there's a base level of knowledge that I just didn't have then. And like you said, now I feel like I could get dropped off on any property, and by end of like within a few hours, well, depending on size here, but like any normal property around here, and I'm gonna know just looking at it, 80% of it I don't even want to scout. Like you just know to go to transitions, like where a deer would most likely be, and you start there. That alone puts you, so much further ahead than somebody like I was in 2016 trying to figure that out. It's just a different ball game now of like, but it takes time and compounding. And so that's what we've tried to accelerate with GoWild is lowering that barrier and making it easier for somebody to go out and have some level of success, and trying to also redefine what that success is a little bit too. Of those deer magazines, you get them up and you're like, my God, look at this 195-inch freak. And it's like, that's not really what you're striving for on your first hunt, right? It's
Right.
like let's be happy with the spike if that's what it takes to get your first archery buck. It's a great place to start is just getting on a deer, right? And then you can build from there. So
And I feel like, people on Go Wild aren't afraid to ask those questions and get a response compared to Facebook or somewhere like that where somebody's probably going to call them an idiot or something like that and be super harsh to them when they honestly don't have a clue and they're just leaning on for somebody for some advice.
yeah, well, we don't tolerate any of the bullying,
No.
but which really we don't get a lot of it because the community is really supportive. But yeah, that we actively delete people for trolling. If you troll somebody for a legal take, we don't have, unless it's a kid. I'll sometimes leave a kid because we want to give them an opportunity to learn from their mistakes. But if somebody's aggressively just being a jerk to somebody over shooting a doe or a young buck or something, it's like, no, we don't do that here. You're out.
Absolutely. So tell us the story of your 2022 buck. I know you got it done there. Was it close to the house there in Kentucky, or where'd you get it done at?
It's kind of close. Yeah, it's like 30 minutes from my house. It's out in corn country. It's where I turkey hunt too. I've got access to a 75-acre farm, and I've hunted this property since 2017. And actually, it's cool because I killed a dude. I never I don't care about racks, and this proves it because I don't even remember how many points it was. Like 11 points, I think. It's a good mass, young buck, but he would have been a total freak the next year. But I killed him in 2017 there, and honestly had not killed a bigger deer there until this year. This one hangs with him. He was a good buck. But that season was interesting because I've just even on 75 acres, the deer move around a decent amount because of the mast. And so, some areas where I've had success sitting in the past, they won't be there. And, it's even now I'm still learning. And this year I started off, I thought, the last 2 years from COVID, the gun pressure has been really heavy. And we're talking like World War III level of amount of shots. I think in 2020, I heard 200 shots throughout the first day.
Oh, wow.
And dude, it's nuts. And
That's
then,
crazy.
the next year I heard 100 shots before 8 a.m. And this year it was not quite that, but it was still quite a bit of shots. And so there's a lot of pressure. I would even argue that there's more pressure where I hunt now, just because it's so just in that like 10-mile stretch there, because it's a lot of like 30-acre farms, and there's just people taking kids out. I mean, you'll hear like 8 shots in a row. It's nuts, and
Wow.
so um, I strategically set up. I was like, well, all those shots will start, and then midday they'll start moving through cover. They're not going to be out in the open as much, and I've seen that in the past where that's happened. Well, I set up in my spot for that, and I didn't see anything. I mean, it was a rough first day, and I just start. I this is my first year having a saddle set up, and I was kind of still compiling it at the beginning of the season, and I had it ready like of archery season, and I had put in maybe like 4 or 5 hunts before gun opener. I didn't hunt a ton of days this year. I think deer season was like maybe 10 or fewer days total. But I was really aggressive on my mobile strategy this year and moving around this property. And so, like after day one of gun opener, it burned me, and I'm like, I'm moving somewhere else. And I just kept moving around this property until I put together. Um, I actually figured out where the does were in an area that like really heavy congregating out in the field in the evenings. And after a couple hunts, I'd even figured out like, I mean, they were almost like clockwork, 4 o'clock on the nose. They're out in the field. It was almost eerie how on the nose it was that they were moving out that direction. And I'm like, okay, I need to be more up that way. And then I figured out these bucks were big. There was a buck that was a lot bigger than the one I shot that was hanging out there. And I saw him the night before, well, the Sunday night before I shot my buck, which I shot my buck on a Thursday. And so when I saw him, I'm like, okay. Again, I didn't run cameras at all this year. I was just kind of rolling with it. So I figured out they were coming out of a spot that I hadn't really seen them come out of as heavily before. And me and Jacob early that week got on X, and he was looking at the masts, and he's like, pulled up my property, and there was a heavy congregation of oaks that I didn't even know about down in the river, like creek bank. So I
Mm-hmm.
think they were going down there and coming out to those does in the evening where they were grazing. And so I'm like, okay, that makes sense. There's a good trail. I turkey hunt back there a decent amount. So I knew like the rough area. And so I'm like, I'm going to set up out on this finger, which normally I can't get to because I don't have there's like 4 buddy stands or permanent stands out there, ladder stands. And but I had the saddle set up, and I was like, well, I'll go out to where I would have a shot at either the does, because I was kind of getting to a point where I needed the meat, or if these bucks start coming up out of this field, like or out of this this one spot, I'll have a shot on them. And I think it was maybe my first time up in the saddle in that spot that I sat there all day. I didn't see much of anything until 4 o'clock, and then does started moving right on the spot. And then I had what looked like 15 minutes shooting light left. I'm sitting here thinking I'm not going to get anything because I just hadn't had anything in range. And I see what I thought was a groundhog moving towards me, and I'm like, that's kind of weird. Just like it didn't feel right, and it's like a weird time of day. It seemed like to see one, and then I realized it was a doe's back. So I'm hunting an area. This property rolls. It's more of like what people think of horse country,
Mm-hmm.
and so I realized that where I've never hunted this spot, I didn't realize that I was so high up now at that spot that the hill had rolled down, and she was kind of in between an embankment. All I could see was her back. And so I'm like, all right, cool. I'll take this doe. She's moving towards me, and really I shouldn't shoot at her right now anyways, because a pass through go to the neighbor's spot, but she's going to be over here in the next 5 minutes. I got time. So I was like, I'm going to wait. And I had a scent wick hanging up across maybe 80 yards away from me, blow because I knew the wind was blowing back towards where I told you the bucks had been coming from. Well, she got real jittery with like 8 minutes to go, and I'm like, something's coming that she knows something's coming that I don't yet, and that's what I was hoping for. And this buck came in, dude, and it was the most like it's the most majestic deer I've seen that I've taken. He came in, he's stomping, he's like kind of grunting, like I could see him doing it with his nose kind of brushing or like snorting around,
Yeah.
and his neck is just like swollen up as you can get, peak rut. And he comes up, and I'm in a saddle, and I've got this like hybrid together saddle system because I've been buying all the returns that you guys send back to GoWild.
That's
Like,
awesome.
but it's like a combination of tethered and trophy line gear. I think I've even got some Latitude stuff in there. I'm a little bit trying out a little bit of everybody this year.
There you go.
But and so I'm hunting with a bow hanger though that I'm resting my rifle on, and so I've got it back, and I have never fallen apart more on a deer than I did this year. I don't know what happened, dude. Like I thought I was past that as a hunter. I mean, I've seen big deer and I normally hold it together. I have never gotten the nerves to hit me all at once. And I think this deer was such a big body that I thought he was a lot bigger rack. This thing was a monster buck, dude. He was more than 200 pounds. I didn't weigh him, but I
That's
mean, the
awesome.
body weight on him was massive. So at distance, he looked a lot bigger even than he was from the rack perspective. But I kind of got the jitters and I had to talk myself out of it.
I've been there before.
Yeah, and so I then started panicking when like that. I had the nervous jitters, but then I started panicking when I realized I'm like, oh, I could see 2 steps ahead. This doe's going to see him coming. She's going to bolt, and he's going to bolt. Like I just started to put together what was going to happen, and so before he could top the hill, I grunted or like I bleated at him with my mouth, and he stops. I shoot, and he just stands there, and he looks at me, and I'm like, did I miss? Like what happened? And I had this like stupid moment of like just like I didn't think I just reality hadn't sunk in yet that I totally missed the deer. He's at 80 some yards. So just a botched shot from nerves. I rack another one, perfect shot on the second one, lung shot, and he rolls over or he goes over the hill. He comes up, jumps back down. I know he's hit. He looked good. Everything felt good. But I was texting with the O2 podcast guys and some Go Wild guys. We had a text thread that kind of started in deer season, and I was so jittery with adrenaline that I could just text big emoji deer down. And that was it. That was like all I could get out. And they were like, "Have you checked?" And I'm like, "I'm such a wreck." And like, I know I should wait, but I was like, I gotta go see this deer. And I'm like, I'm just gonna creep up over the rolling hill here and see if he's there. And that would have been like 150 yards away. I'm like, I'm not gonna push him too much. Like, I'll just see if he's fallen in the field. And I get up and I could see the tail, and so I approach, and he's dead. And ended up being a really like I was really happy with it. 11 point. I don't know how old he was. Maybe a 2.5, 3.5. I just again skull wise, that's I would say somewhere in there. Teeth seemed like they were in fairly good shape. Seemed youngish, but just huge, absolutely huge body on this thing.
That's
Um,
awesome.
the neck roast was like 2 of my thighs, just pulling these giant pieces of meat off. But yeah, man, I mean, it was, I was really proud because of the season. Wasn't prepared. I was kind of bouncing around to different spots, really trying to pull together anything that was better than last year. Last year, I accidentally tagged out because I shot what I thought was a doe at 110 yards. And it was I am talking like the tiniest of tines that count in Kentucky, unfortunately, but they were laying flat on his head.
Oh man.
Dude, couldn't see him. 120. I learned my lesson on shooting a doe before I get my buck tag. They need to be a lot closer. I had passed on that deer in archery season 6 times.
That's
I
great.
once I got up to him, I realized which deer it was, and I nicknamed it Toothpicks because he had 2 little
That's
toothpicks laying
awesome.
back on his head. There's a trophy shot of me on Go Wild if you go back to that deer, and you can see where I'm holding his head up and his ears are up, and you can't see any antlers.
That's
So, so,
awesome.
so I had like this self-imposed pressure. I was like, I got to do better than Toothpicks this year.
That's awesome, man. Well, definitely congratulations on your buck, man.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
But transition a little bit from whitetails. I want to hear. I've listened to a story a couple times that you've done, but I want you to tell it on here. I want to hear about this Virginia bear hunt.
Yeah, man, that was interesting. I didn't think about this when I started Go Wild, but I've had so many nice people that have offered to take me hunting with them, and
Everybody probably.
it's just like people love the app, and they love the app because it's great community.
Right.
And we built the product, but we can't build the community. I mean, we can do things to help with that, but like what makes the community great is not me. It really it's all the people that use the platform that are so supportive of each other. And it's been weird that I get like people are so nice and appreciative of that. And I know it sounds almost like I'm bragging. I'm really not. I'm just framing up the story.
Right.
um the I've gotten so many nice people that have been like, dude, come hog hunt with me here, or come do this, or caribou, or like whatever. I've had crazy offers, and I've always, we're a startup, and I have to make decisions for what's right. I could do those things that'd be right for Brad, but
Right.
the what's right for the company is different than what I would like to do all the time. But an opportunity came up recently with Chris Powell and Heath Hyatt from Houndsman XP. Um, we're working with those guys this year quite a bit, and I got black bear has been something I've been really interested in doing for about the last 6 years, and I got into that from Cody Rich. I used to listen to his podcast a ton. Cody's a good friend of mine from the industry, and I got into it thinking my first black bear hunt would be more of a spot and stalk, and I've done that once in Eastern Kentucky, and it's a really hard hunt. It's late season if you're doing the rifle, and it's just tough. It's really tough because it's kind of the winding down of the season. The bears aren't as mobile, and you got to really know what you're doing, I think, to have success with that. And I don't. I've just not had any luck with that. So these guys offered to take me not only black bear hunting but with hounds.
That's awesome.
And so with hounds, really piqued my interest in a different way because I've been talking to these guys. I've been on their podcasts, and have learned a lot about hound hunting from them. And then also like Ben Sheets, who's on Go Wild.
Mhm.
I've these guys have just kind of piqued my interest in the whole thing. I would say now Go Wild probably has one of the biggest communities of houndsmen in the
Yeah,
world.
I see it a
And
lot.
yeah, it's cool. And I was like, I don't know a lot about that. And I've been on bird dog hunts, which is similar but very different. I'm gonna give it a go. So me and Derek Towles from Go Wild, he helps with a lot of different things at Go Wild.
Yeah, he's
But
been on the show before.
yeah, Derek's awesome.
He's
So
cool.
Derek was one of the first 500 people on the app, and then we ended up hiring him eventually. But so Derek had just killed a bear out in Colorado, and that was a spot and stalk, totally different vibe, right? So he's like, man, this will be cool to go on another bear hunt that's totally different. See what he didn't know what to expect either. So we go down to Virginia with these guys, and the night before, Derek and I just realizing that we have very like not we've improperly packed. Derek had a big backpack, Western style. He had a 30-30, and I had no idea what I was doing. And like, I was kind of thinking more of I would have a distance shot of like a longer I didn't realize how close these guys get up to these bears before they shoot them. And so I had a 30-06 because that's the only thing I had that I thought could do the job. And they're like, no, that you can't get to where we're going with that gun. And I'm like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, like whatever. So they're like, here, this is your new gun. So give me a 30-30. And they all shoot pistols though. And I was like, that's kind of crazy. Like,
Yeah,
that
no
seems
kidding.
nuts. It seems nuts. I totally get it now because we hiked for 4 miles into the woods because again, same time of year I was talking about where it's hard, the bears kind of hole up. Well, so same thing. The dogs were not rigging on the trucks the first day like you kind of think of with hound hunting. We're hiking and letting the dogs go try to stir up the bears. And so 4 miles in, we finally get on a bear. And I say finally, in all reality, I had a very fast hunt because the bear treed early in the morning typically is longer. They'll run them longer. And, the experience is just generally not that fast. What it's also not this hard to pack out. So we get this bear treed. We're 4 miles in, and Heath, Derek's got his gun with a scabbard on the back, and I've joked a couple times that he looked like Buzz from Toy Story with the rocket.
Yeah.
That comes back into play because there was one point where Derek gets stuck, and he's like Buzz. He's like, "Go on without me, I'll catch up." That was this moment actually, and I'm carrying the little Go Wild sling pack, and I just got some stuff crammed down in that, and I had the gun. And so I packed lightweight on my pack. Derek went heavy. We both have 30-30s. And so Keith is like, I'm sorry. We're like, that's weird. What are you sorry for? We're here to hunt. And he's like, you'll see. And we go 750 yards down this hillside. And first couple minutes are fine. Very quickly, we get into the thickest frozen laurel and rhododendron that you can imagine. I mean, there's no path. You're just busting straight through this stuff. There's
Dang.
quarter inch to half inch of ice on everything. And so We go all the way down to the creek, and then we start moving towards the sound of the dogs. And these guys just went into like next gear when that bear got treed, because we're like the last 3 days they had been getting bears stuck, and so the bear would hole up and then it starts attacking the dogs.
Oh wow.
And so we don't know if the bear's treed or if it's in a hole at this point. And so these guys are just not messing around. I mean, at one point, Taylor, the guy I ended up following after Derek got lost and stuck in a tree, him and Heath were kind of behind us. Taylor's running, like I mean, running,
Oh wow.
and he's like James Bond rolling under rhododendron, and I'm doing everything I can to keep up because I'm like I don't know where I am. I mean, I'll just keep moving towards this sound. You know, it's kind of hard to miss 10 hounds hunting, barking, but like I don't want to get left by the guy. I want to get there and see the whole thing. So we roll up. I don't know how long this was, maybe 20 minutes of like getting down to the bear, maybe less. It might have been 10. I have no idea. We get there and immediately realize all of my thoughts on shot placement are out the window. Like I'm thinking like if you look up broadside bear or bear vitals, it's all broadside or like bear facing you in multi directions. This freaking 200-pound bear is wrapped around this tree. It's I've got a shooting window that's like the size of a large dinner plate. It is it's in a canopy. Like I know it's like it's winter December, but like this tree, it's still darker down in this creek bed, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I can, and there was still like there's cypress trees. There's still like it's not like it's a high light situation.
Right. Dark.
It's dark, and so what is a bear? It's black, and you know you're trying to like all of the thoughts I had on prepping for vitals. Derek and I even talked about it the night before of middle. I can't see middle. I can't see anything, and so I made a tragic mistake when I placed the first shot. And then I was trying to preserve the meat. I like had this whitetail hunter mindset of I'm going to hit vitals, try to double lung and get behind the hams. I'm like a huge food fanatic and I didn't want to spoil a ham, which
Right.
ended up making me spoil like way more meat because I had to shoot this thing 4 times.
Dang.
I shoot him a little too far back and it's gut shot. And so this bear starts moving all over the place, dude. And so he kind of comes down and it's just this big blob, right, that I'm shooting at now. Like and again, I've never done this before. And so he starts climbing back up the tree and I shoot and in the video I can see him hitting him every time. I have no idea where the shots hit, by the way. When I skin the bear, I have like it's just like they're kind of hard to tell. There was a couple shots that I could tell. And then the last shot I knew. So his last shot, he starts really running up the tree and I took out his back ham, like horrible shot, but he's moving like, right. I'm shooting at a
Right.
moving thing, with a dinner plate sized shooting window looking straight up at this blob. And so not my finest moment, but I believe in not hiding these things and trying to act like I did this.
Oh,
Like
absolutely.
I'm like, I think there's too much of that. And it's like, yeah, I screwed up some stuff. And I learned some lessons. But I mean, the bear died. So, goal accomplished, but maybe not,
Right.
maybe less efficiently than I hoped. Right. So fourth shot, this thing comes down. And one of the last things I see is bear landing on top of two dogs, like basically right on top of them. Heath runs in to try to grab the dogs, and then the bear rolls over into the creek. And I didn't know there was a creek. I mean, I hadn't even thought about the creek, just because it's so high action. The dogs are barking. To me,
Probably
it felt
pretty intense,
it's
really.
yeah, dude. For like somebody that's never done this, and Derek said the same thing. He's like, it felt like chaos. The hounds guys are just like, this is what they do. Like they're very experienced at this, and I've even talked to Heath and Chris afterwards, and like it's so funny to hear other people, newbies, talk about this because like we don't think of that as chaos. It felt like it was very orchestrated and controlled. I'm like, I know it was, but like the deer hunting is super quiet, very peaceful. There's one shot, and then there's silence, right?
Right.
Like it's just slow pace. The animal doesn't know I'm there. That was another thing that was strange for me. I told Chris, I was like, if I didn't like any of it, it was just that the bear knew I was there. I said, I'm not ragging on you guys, but that's something that like emotionally is very different. Knowing that I'm not saying the bear was scared and all that. I'm not anthropomorphizing the bear,
Right.
but that part of it is very different. And I don't think you understand that until you've done it, because I didn't really anticipate that part of it. But the bear sitting there looking at me, knowing it's in trouble, like it knows this ain't good, right?
Right.
Like,
Definitely.
and there's just it was just different, and I would do it again. But that part of it, I like with like that deer. This is total opposite of the deer I told you about. Okay, short of me shooting once, but at that point he's heard gunshots all day. I don't know. I think like that's almost why he didn't run, because they've just been hearing gunshots all the time, right? Like that
Right.
deer was in like peak of his life of like, oh yeah, I'm gonna go breed that doe right there, you
Right.
know. Whereas the bear is like, oh shit, right? It's
Yeah,
like,
I got caught.
yeah, yeah. So like there was that, but then so this is really like I if this is a whitetail story, that's where it ends, right? It's like, yeah, and then I drove the truck up and we drove him out of there.
Right.
Or like the whitetail packouts just generally aren't that crazy. We've kind of got that part of it good, right? After like 300 years of white man slaying deer, we know what we're doing on hauling out a deer, right?
Right.
So the bear though, they leave me and Derek with this bear, and these Appalachian guys, like they're like, we got to get the dogs out of here. We don't recommend cutting it up. Like we're going to try to drag him out to this trailhead here, and then we can weigh him. Like the bear weight is what they really like to do, whereas deer guys like their inch count on antlers. And we're
Right.
like, all right, that sounds doable. Like we can get it to that trailhead, dude. We start. Well, he fell 15 feet down the hill, so there was no going back up. It was straight down on this creek, and so we start trying to get this. We field dress him and start trying to move him through this rhododendron. It's over boulders, dude. We're like falling into holes. My shins were bruised for 2 weeks after this from falling so many times.
Wow.
And then we pulled forever through this stuff. And then at one point we hear dogs running back at us, and I'm like, what the hell's going on? They were supposed to take the dogs back to the truck. Heath calls us and he's like, we're running a bear back towards you. Get your gun
Oh
ready.
man.
Yeah.
Oh, shit.
That bear ran. Well, I couldn't see him, but we heard the dogs come through. They ran 30 yards up above us, and then the dogs just vanished. I have no idea. I still don't know where those dogs, who those were. They were one of the groups. There's 6 groups with 10 dogs each, so I have no idea where they went or whose they were. This comes back around in a second. Me and Derek pull over the rhododendron, and we don't have radios, so we're only able to use cell phones. We're trying to send on-X coordinates to them. They're not working with their Garmin's for some reason, and so like they don't know where we are. We can't communicate with them. It is cold. We've been busting through all this ice. It's like 36 degrees, and we're soaked to the bone. Derek had a Western pack. I don't, because I told you I packed light like these guys do, but
Right.
they typically drag out. So we start talking, and like after an hour, I'm like, we're talking about cutting it up and packing out. And I'm like, I can't carry anything. I've got this little GoWild sling bag, and so we drag over rhododendron and laurel, and then finally one of the guys on the phone is like, you got to get out of that creek bottom because that stuff is so thick you'll never get out of there. You got to get up to going up the mountain so that you can get under it. Sounds awesome, right? Well, then you realize you're pulling a 200-pound dead body
Straight uphill.
straight up. I mean, dude, people like to rag on Appalachia, but like we have our share of straight up inclines. Um, in fact, I did a hike the other day. It was like 10 miles, and I did 2,700 feet of climb. Right, like
Dang.
we have some hills. Right, this is one of those hills. It's so steep that we would move this bear like 5 yards, and if we let go, it'd start like rolling back down the hill. Right, like it's steep and slick. It rained all day the next before, and then it froze back over. Well, the rhododendron and laurel was so thick, we couldn't stand up to pull the bear. So we're literally hands and knees trying to drag this thing. This was 3 hours. And looking back on it, we should have given up a lot sooner. I wish we had, because finally, like I finally told Derek, I'm like, we just can't do this. This is not humanly possible for the two of us to get this thing a mile and a half out of here. How far have we gone? He pulls up on X and he goes, you don't want to know. He goes, we might have gone 150 yards
Oh man.
in 3 hours. So I was like, all right, we got to get this thing up onto a rock to where it won't roll, and we got to get out of here and go get help. We got to go get packs and cut this thing up. It's 12:30 at this point, and we on-X pin. We do finally get it up to a point where we can drop him, and we literally like that. The hill was so steep we couldn't just leave him because he would roll and slide back down, erasing 45 minutes of work. And so we get him up, leave him, and start walking up, and I hear a like over to my side, and I thought, immediate thought is bear, and then I'm like, nah, you're making that up. That's probably the 4-wheeler. They said there's a 4-wheeler coming to get us. Yeah, that's what it is. and then I look back at Derek, and Derek is cool as a cucumber, and his eyes are big, and I'm like, okay, that's a bear. Like I realized, and then I look down. I'm standing in bear scat fresh on top of old bear scat. Like there could not be more bear poop than what I'm standing in. And I'm like, this is not good. I had reloaded at one point when I heard the dogs running through, but we were dragging that bear. So I had unloaded again because I was flagging Derek with the so and it's like not good. So
Right.
I told you I like to tell all the brutal reality here. So
Right.
I had unloaded and I look at him, I'm like, I'm not even loaded right now. And he's his gun's back in his scabbard. So he's trying to get to his gun and nothing happens for a second. And then we hear this loud crash and I'm like, this is it. I'm gonna die over a bare body. Like he's just gonna pull me over and leave me on top of his buddy here. But it ended up it had warmed up just enough to where this big chunks of ice had started falling, and it was the ice falling. I have no idea where the bear went. 100%. That's right. We got up right in line with where those dogs had run through earlier, and so that we heard a bear at like less than 50 yards, but it went away from us, obviously. Um, we go up to try to make this story like a little more brief, at least here at the end. 2 hours of coordinating. We finally meet up with the guys. The whole team comes in, helps us cut up, pack out, and we did not get back to the truck until 5:30. So we started at like 6 and went until 5:30. I walked 11 miles. I could barely move the next day for a little bit. Like it took some some freshening up in the morning to kind of get moving because you're just, and even like 3 days later, I was still like that because all the 1, 2, 3 pull of the bear trying to drag for 3 hours. But dude, it was so amazing, like getting to see all the dogs work, see how those guys run. The next day we rigged, so they did put them on the truck, and I got to see how they run that. And it's like storm chasers, they're out there coordinating. Everybody's driving and flying past each other, trying to get ahead of the bear, just like you would a storm. And we ended up, at one point we were like miles away from a dog. We had to drive an hour to find one of the dogs that was on a bear scent.
That's
And
crazy.
I still walked 7 miles that day, even mostly working out of the truck. I mean, it's
Dang.
people that say it's easy have never done it. I'm telling you, that was harder than any whitetail hunt I've ever done. Every bit of it.
I say I've been wanting to do the whole bear thing too, and I don't know. From what you just said, I think I'd rather sit over a bait site or something.
Yeah, dude. Well, the bait site would definitely be less walking. It's kind of like whitetail hunting. You're gonna ride off of it's like showing up to your buddy's buddy stand after he's done all the work scouting. That's what I feel like.
Right.
That's what I feel like baiting is probably like. Like you're reaping somebody else's rewards if you're doing that. Because
Right.
I mean, I know that a lot of those bait guys, they got to wheel in all that bait that they take in. I think that's probably a lot of front loaded work, but the actual hunting of it is lighter weight. But I just have actually, we just launched an article for me today about like, cut the crap. These hound guys are legit. You think
Right.
about, I think about how much work they put in. I mean, Heath and Chris run their dogs all year long, man. I mean, they're coon hunting, and then they're going up to New York in the off season when they can run bears and do treat and freed up there. And then they move throughout the country with mountain lions, and they do bobcats, and most of the time they're just letting these animals go. They're just working the dogs and training them. But I'm like, people call it easy, and I'm like, dude, this is nothing but work. Every bit of this is work
Right.
on these guys. Like they spend more money than anybody else. They spend more time than anybody else. Anybody in their right mind that's seen it in action would never be like, yeah, that was easy, you know?
Right. Nothing about that sounded easy
No.
whatsoever.
Now they do. Like Chris even told me, he's like, yeah, we have moments where we shoot them 50 yards from the truck. Like sometimes the bear runs back and it works out that way. But my point is it's not just the pack outs, it's all the training. And I mean, these dogs are trained like Olympic athletes. They have no body fat on them. They can run 30 miles a day. These guys know their caloric intake on these dogs down to the calorie and what they should put back into them. I mean, they're nutritionists basically. One of the guys we were hunting with was a vet who can stitch up a dog on the trailer like in 10 minutes and be done, like instantaneously fix a dog. Like they're very smart, they're very hardworking, and I would say if anybody's really curious about it, you should just try to find a group and go. I was really surprised at how welcoming they were. I mean, no ego, no, didn't care who shot a bear, didn't even care if they shot a bear. They just want to see some bears and get to work their dogs.
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of what you were talking about earlier with people inviting you to do stuff on Go Wild. I actually had a kid that I went to high school with. I guess he's not a kid anymore, neither one of us are, but he found me on, didn't realize that it was me on Go Wild, and asked me to come with him on a coon hunt with dogs in video, because I love video and anything that I possibly can. And I was like, man, that's so cool. He didn't even know it was me. It was just
That's
somebody
funny.
reaching out on Go Wild, like, hey, let's team up for a coon hunt. I was like, I never been on a coon hunt before.
Yeah, well, and what I've found is that a lot of these guys recognize that getting more people into it helps people get a better perception of it because it just, it's like, oh, that was easy. You didn't do any work on that bear. You showed up after the dogs did all the work and shot it. And I'm like, well, yeah, that's true for Brad, I guess. Like, I didn't do any of the dog training work, but you can also go on a deer hunt and just happen to show up at a property like I did in 2017. I had never scouted that property before, and I shot a really nice buck off that property by happenstance, just by showing up and sitting in the stand that was provided for me. Sometimes that is hunting, but like at the same
Oh, for sure.
time, uh, even that, man, like how much easier is it to go down to Kroger and get the deal on the pork butt instead of doing any of that, right? Like that, it's
Right.
it's still like hunting to me, you're still signing up for more work than most of the population's willing to do. Even if you want to hunt squirrels, like whatever it is, it's like none of that was easy. That's not exactly why we do it. It's like, wow, there's an easy food source right there. If I wanted to do that, I would just go buy the meat that's already butchered and ready to roll, and you can even get it pre-seasoned if you want to, right? Like, it's
Right.
like we don't have to go through this. I think it's more of the relationship with it now. Like I said with the bear, I would totally go back now that I've done. I would shoot another bear if I like not right now because I got 60 pounds of bear meat in my freezer, but like if I was in a meat situation where I'm like, yeah, I don't have any meat, so I would love to do that. But if I didn't, if my freezer was full, I would still go because the experience was so cool.
Man, I go to an event every year. It's held by some local farmers. It's called the Winter Fry, and everybody brings. I mean, there's just so much food there. Last year, somebody had it was like glazed black cherry bear meatballs in a crock pot, and dude, that's some of the best meat I've had in a long time.
My wife was very skeptical. She did not grow up in a hunting family. They're from Chicago, and she just was very skeptical of venison. I've converted her, and she loves it now. My kids love it now, and we cooked the first night. I made tacos with the black bear, and she said that's better than deer.
Oh wow,
Yeah, it is really good meat, man. I mean, I
absolutely.
don't people. I've had some people kind of turn their nose up at it. I'm like, honestly, don't knock it till you tried it because I've had it a couple different ways now. I made a breakfast casserole with it the other day. Phenomenal.
Sounds really good. Sounds like you do some experimenting on food, about like I do with anything else. Turkey. We for the football games last weekend, we shot a 7-man limit of mallards a few weeks back, and I had a bunch of duck meat. So we were testing out all kinds of ways to fix it, pan sear it, throw it in the deep fryer for a minute. I wanted to make like almost like an egg roll, but do like in
Mm,
a wonton wrapper and deep fry it with some cabbage and some other stuff. But
that sounds good.
it does sound good with some like sweet chili glaze with it or
Yeah.
something. Be good. Uh, that's cool, man. Congrats on the bear, and pretty cool story.
Thanks, dude.
I want to talk to you about like these trade shows that it's got going on right now and the ones you've already been to. How was the ATA show in Indianapolis? Everybody treat you good in Indy?
Yeah, man. ATA is good. It's kind of the kickoff to trade show season, so you kind of get to start making. It's like almost like a warm up. A lot of those people are going to be at shot. It's a slower show. I mean, and I will say it's gotten a little slower the last few years. They really need to open up to media the entire time, get a little more enthusiasm around archery. I just think that I'm a little worried about the archery model of just being, pro shop. It's so pro shop driven, and the industry is not really embracing digital media very well. I would love to see them open up and getting more podcasters like you in there, getting more bloggers and video content creators in there. But my one complaint about that show is just they kind of do a stiff arm to the media the first day. Um, and the overall the show is just, it seems like it's a little bit smaller than it used to be. This is my fifth one. um just transparently, I usually I always say I'm not smart enough to lie. You asked me the question, and I'm just gonna say like I'm not sure where that show's going. I think Shot Show and in transition or juxtaposition is a totally different animal. Seems to be growing ferociously. They expanded into an entirely new floor and are still expanding. I've heard they're adding archery heavily for next year. They added a outdoor party shot show after dark, which sounds very sexual. It is. It's not. It's just the party that coincidentally is at dark. You got to be careful with that kind of stuff in Vegas, you know.
Absolutely.
But like they had like ZZ Top played
Oh,
one
that's
night.
awesome.
Yeah, and Shot loves the media. They bring in like the media. You get credentialed at Shot as and your royalty for if you're media. They had 3,000 media members there. They have a giant press room. They have food and drinks for the media. They have media gets their own private check-in. I mean, it's like it's just interesting to see. Shot Show really gets and embraces the creator. You know, guys
Hmm.
like you, guys that have YouTube channels, and then there's still old school print media there. And I feel like ATA is missing the boat on that a little bit. Now, ATA, still a fun time. We went and hung out with, the O2 guys were there. We saw Dan Johnson. I had a lot of quality meetings there. I
Hmm.
don't want to say that it was a bust, but I think archery is really important. I think the sport of archery is growing from the youth side on target, but we want to keep that on the bow hunting side. And that show has just gotten really whitetail focused, and it's really dependent on this pro shop model. And as you've probably seen, as I have, a lot of these local pro shops, the owner ages out, and they're just not handing off those shops. They're closing. And so I worry about an industry that's built on that foundation. Like, what is our sales backup plan? If you guys are, they're all kind of, a lot of these brands are not selling online. They're very opposed to that because it offends their dealers, and I get it, but it's not very forward thinking, man. I'm a little concerned for the future. There are progressive brands there. Bear Archery, we're selling their gear, and
Yep.
really proud to be working with Bear. But I'm just a little worried about the model overall. I hope ATA will change some position on that and embrace the media. Get more stories. We need more stories told, right? That's I mean, and they do some of that, but I think they could do 10 times more than they're doing.
Well, yeah, like before at ATA, that was like the kickoff for all these companies in archery to drop their new bow. So everybody was so excited to get down there, check the bows out, and all that kind of
Yeah, and
stuff.
you'd have 100 people standing at a booth too.
Yeah.
It was, I remember the first time I went, I was like, "What is going on? Are they throwing out money?" Because you would have, I remember, no kidding, one time there was probably 150 people crowded around a booth trying to hear an announcement, and I didn't see that once this year, not one time.
Yeah. Yeah. I met up with some people that were attending. I was supposed to meet with Paul in months, but I never got around to it. Met the guys from Mid State Outdoors from Michigan. We went and had some drinks and some appetizers downtown. But I think Indy's a great place to hold a conference like that. I feel like it's such a great downtown life that's so close to the convention center. I feel like they do a pretty good job down there.
Yeah, I mean the show itself has tons of potential, and like it is a great spot. The floor is plenty big enough. It's just there's some changes I would make if I were running it, and some of this is not ATA itself. Like the dealer model problem that I'm talking about is just I just worry about that industry wide. I feel like the rug it's a very vulnerable. Like if there's going to be a tipping point with these shops if we lose 30% of them in the next 10 years with these owners who are boomers, they're going to age out. And what's going to happen? If you lose 30% of your sales force as a brand, what's that do to you if you're not prepared with a
Right.
backup? So, yeah, so I'm that was a little concerning, but overall, like Indianapolis is a great spot. Honestly, I live in Louisville, and Indy's a better spot to do it because they always host it out at the fairgrounds in Louisville, which is a terrible
Right.
spot to do it. I hate it out there. It's a food desert. It's an entertainment desert. There's nothing out there. I mean, it's literally the same place we set up pigs for the state fair. It's
Right.
like we have a really nice downtown convention center. I'm guessing it's just too expensive for them. But downtown Louisville's awesome if they would hold it down
Oh,
there. I
for
mean, we have
sure.
so much good food, and I mean,
Absolutely.
I it always I always find myself apologizing on behalf of the city when ATA's in Louisville. I'm like, I'm sorry, this isn't really what we look like. Well, it's not just an airport, you know. Um,
Right.
but I've heard it's going to St. Louis next year.
Yeah, I seen that. Somebody
Yeah,
else told me that too.
I do love St. Louis, so I'll probably go. I will say though, that, man, there's a lot of people that said they're not coming back next year. Like
Wow.
yeah, it was like it was not great vibes for ATA. Shot Show though, it was very strong. I can't imagine not going to Shot Show anymore. If anything, I would probably extend. We cut a day for Vegas this year because we had so much travel. We were trying to be efficient. I could see myself going back to 3 full days on the floor. It's a lot though, man. I walked 25 miles in 2 days. That shot.
Wow.
There's 14 miles of booths, and that's if you walk it straight. There's 800,000 square feet of space, which is like 18 acres of
That's crazy.
booths. There's 75,000 people. There's a lot there.
What shows is will Go Wild be present at this year?
So, Great American Outdoor Show is in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. That show runs from, I will tell you the dates here momentarily as I take up airtime to be able to pull up my calendar. it
No,
is,
you're fine, but
it's February 4th through the 12th. So, Harrisburg is within driving distance of a huge chunk of the nation's population. It's kind of crazy. People are like, why is this show here? But I mean, if you draw a 6 hour drive around Harrisburg, it is nuts all the how accessible that show is to a lot of, I'm sure, even your listeners. So we're in the shooting sports hall, which sounds weird, but we go up there and sell. So we're selling a lot of optics. So we're booth 412. I'll be there the first Saturday, and then I'll be back for the Friday, Saturday, Sunday at the end of the show. So I'm kind of going up there as the workhorse, driving the trailer up and helping Dan and Erica set up.
Mhm.
And then Erica and Dan will be up there for the first weekend. And then the O2 guys show up. They're going to help us on, I think, Monday and Tuesday, or maybe Tuesday and Wednesday. And then Jacob and Braden show up midweek, and then I'll be back. So we have, if you wear a Go Wild hat to our booth, you'll get a free gift. And then
Sweet.
we'll have some killer deals. I mean, we got like up to 40% off optics. We have 50% off our tack bags, and there's a lot. I just built out the deals, and there's a lot of sweet deals, man. Some of
That's
them I can't.
awesome.
Some of them I literally can't say because they're so sweet.
Besides PA, is there any other shows you guys are going to be at?
God, I hope not.
So I'm sure it's a lot of work for you and your team. I'm sure.
It's just we're just too small to be able to. I've been a lot of our members are begging us to come to NWTF, and this is our second year doing Great American Outdoor Show. That show is 200,000 people. NWTF probably has this. Well, those maybe the Texas, what do they call it? The deer hunting extravaganza, or the
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
Texas
yeah.
trophy hunters.
Right.
I think they have the second largest, because I think those get like 55, 60,000 people. But NWTF is right there. It's 55,000 people, I think.
I'm
Oh,
registered. I don't know. We're still working on it, but I think me and the wife might go down for
I
NWTF.
mean,
Nashville's such a awesome place to go,
it's
anyways.
so awesome, man. I love that show so much, and I think it's probably my favorite show to attend personally. I will say, if you've never been to Great American Outdoor Show, I told you Shot was 800,000 square feet. Great American's like 650,000 square feet. It's just
Wow.
shy of Shot Show size, and a lot of those booths are scaled mini versions of what they set up at Shot, and it's all a lot of it's the same salespeople. So like you're getting as close to Shot as you can get without credentials. Um, but NWTF is awesome. I love that show. I think we'll eventually get back there. We only have 12 people, and it
Right.
takes half of them to run a Great American Outdoor Show. So we're just not in a position to where we can. I would literally get home on the 13th and then turn around and leave on the 14th to go to, actually maybe even have to drive straight there. I don't know. The NWTF, you have to set up on either Tuesday or Wednesday. So it's just brutal. We couldn't do it. I wanted to attend, but I got kids, I got a family, and you can only do so much. Maybe next year. We really, I got down to the wire talking to NWTF, and they're such great partners. They had a primo booth spot for us, and It was gonna be fun, but at the end of the day, you gotta eventually say like would be cool, but gotta pass. SCI was the same thing. It's in Nashville the week after, and just can't do it. It's too
Yeah.
much.
What about personally? Do you have any plans for 2023? What do you got in line? Do hunting, fishing? What do you got lined up?
Yeah, I want to do more bass fishing this year. I just got kind of have gotten more into that the last couple of years, kind of learning from Jacob a little bit. Caught my personal best at the end of late season last year over at a pond I've got access to now. I've actually got hunting access to it now, but it's a weird property. It's a tree farm in the middle of like in the heart of Louisville. So it's small. There are deer on there. I've had some decent bucks on there, but I've also had some poachers come through and trash my blind and like have shotguns in hand on my cameras. So I'm like, I don't know. I don't know if I want to be over here hunting. It seems a little competitive over here. So you guys could just keep those park deer. So that's like just a local goal. I want to do more of that. But then I'm debating an antelope hunt right now. I might do that this year. The kind of entry to Western hunting. I've never done it, and it's just keep putting it on a pedestal, and I'm not getting any younger. So that's the top one on my radar. And then there's like, bizarrely enough, Parker McDonald mentioned alligator hunting to me, and he's like, dude, it's like bear hunting. It's crazy, and it's not what you think it is, and it's nuts. He's like, you got to do it once. So I'm like, yeah, I could see that being really fun. So maybe I'll do that. I don't know. One of those two, though.
That's awesome, man. What's Go Wild got in store for 2023? Please tell me we have another Send It Slam because I had so much fun at the last one.
Yeah, so I'm trying to figure out Send It Slam right now. Jacob's trying really. Like I think it's gonna happen. It is hard to find a venue to do what we need to do. So we're still working on it, and I hope to have an announcement like in March about the date and everything.
Okay.
If we do it, it'll be August this year instead of July. We've got a lot of support behind it from podcasters and brands. It's just that event really needed to be at one location, and we also want to double the size. So bringing 1,000 people into an event is a lot for a lot of places. So I don't have an announcement on that yet, but we're working on it. In terms of like what we're working on, a lot of people, even if you're on Go Wild, may not have noticed yet. We kind of quietly launched this product called Pursuits.
Mm-hmm.
And if you tap the home screen and go pull up your tray, you'll see it. It is so cool because it pulls in all the top trophies for like you'll hit whitetail hunting, and then the whole screen just takes over with everything whitetail. It's got all of our top blogs, so you can go on and read blogs by like Eric Clark or Bo Martonic, and you can see the top trending gear of what people are buying. You can see the top questions that people are asking. We're going to continue to roll out those. So we started with whitetail, turkey, and bass. We're going to be introducing a hound hunting. We'll do a waterfowl. Eventually get to like a camping, everyday carry, elk hunting, and just keep rolling those out. We're working on a little guy you may have seen in the app named Squatchbot,
Yeah.
and he's creepy right now a little bit. It's a little so if you post a question on Go Wild, you can post and flag a post as a question. And so what typically happens, what the app does is it goes out and finds people. It's like, okay, Brett's asking a question about deer hunting, and I know these however 12, 20, 100 people know about deer hunting. I'll see if they can answer this question, right? So the algorithm would do that for you, and it's really impactful. Like you might get 30 answers in an hour. It's that good sometimes, depending on also how good like how well you are at writing a question.
Right.
Squatchbot answers automatically. So he's an artificial intelligence bot that we've built. We are training him right now. And so the goal is we realize that we have hundreds of thousands of posts that people have posted in Go Wild. And just like how like a Facebook group or a Reddit forum, things kind of fall to the bottom, right? If they're not active recently, they go to the bottom and you lose all this knowledge that was built up. So we realized that we could look at all of the content in Go Wild and like imagine if you had a guy that was as smart as everybody on Go Wild combined. That's what we're trying to build him to be, so that when you ask like, hey, how do I get into deer hunting, he can answer. Now he can do that right now, but he's using information from the internet, which may or may not be accurate, right?
Right.
Like I asked him when we were testing him, I said, where can I go hunt public land deer in Kentucky? And he's like, here's the top 10 WMAs in Kentucky that you could check out. And I responded and asked him, I said, cool, can I get a website link? And he sent me the link.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and a guy the other day was like, hey, my obsession bow limbs need replaced. I don't know what to do. And he's like, here's the phone number for obsession bows. Like, it's like he is very good off the cuff right now, but our goal is to be able to get him to a point to where whatever you ask, he knows the collective knowledge of what's been asked before, and he knows like what was good answers because we have an upvote system. And so that's coming, and it's really cool. It's never been done before. We've built the first artificial intelligence chatbot in the outdoors. He'll formally roll out probably next month in February. My co-founder Chris is working on him right now, trying to train him, and he's built on the back of technology that was built in Silicon Valley. Like we're kind of it's a third party that built the original version of this, and we're using it for hunting. It was kind of funny because we launched him, and I don't care to admit this. Like the first thing he did was like, I don't support hunting. And it's like, no, you do. And he's like, oh, okay. And so it's funny because you can train this thing and teach it what it is. He's figured out he's a Sasquatch. We didn't teach him that. I swear to God, we didn't teach him he's a Sasquatch. He will sometimes talk about his fur. Like he'll talk about how he likes solitude in the woods. Like he knows his name is Squatch. And so he kind of put that together. Some people have been mildly creeped out by it. Most of the community loves it though, because you can banter with him. I asked him the other day if he was coming for my job as CEO, and he's like, ha ha ha. He said, I think I'd make a great CEO, but I don't want your job. And I'm like, I'm a little concerned now. So,
Well, that's awesome, man. I appreciate you coming on and talking everything from deer to bear to GoWild and shows and everything, man. Tell everybody where they can find you at on social media.
Yes, sir. So I'm not on the meta platforms. GoWild has accounts. It's GoWild app on Instagram. I think we post to Facebook. I don't even know. We are bigger, like outside of GoWild, we're bigger into posting the video content. So you can find GoWild app on TikTok. We're on YouTube Shorts. We post a lot of our podcast clips there. The app, if you want to download that, it's just in the App Store, GoWild, or you can go to downloadgowild.com. We do have a Polaris giveaway. So if you download an account and just create an account right now, you get entered for a chance to win a $40,000 Polaris that is tricked out. It's covered in GoWild camo. We launched our own camo pattern. It's sweet. It's going to be painful to give it away. But then if you go to your profile and you have a share link, you can share that link with your friends.
I said it's like everybody on my phone.
Dude, yeah, totally. Because so we track what we do is that unique link. We track it when you download, when your friends download it. And we're like, all right, Brett sent Steve over here. Brett now gets another entry into the Polaris giveaway. No. So it's really easy. There's no purchase required. You also get $10 for just creating an account. When you join, you'll get an automated message from me at 24 hours in. If you reply back, it's really me. I don't have an assistant reading those or anything. It's really me. So let me know you saw us on that show. If you're not quite convinced yet, I'm on TikTok, founding.father, and then I'm on LinkedIn, so you can find me there. But otherwise, it's just GoWild. That's where I only play. Well, I think I'm on Twitter too, which I just mostly post like ridiculous. Paul Campbell says he's like, you have three personalities. There's Brad on LinkedIn, there's Brad on GoWild, and there's Brad on Twitter, where you just shit talk everybody.
I see some of that. I was laughing. I appreciate you coming on, man. It's been fun. I feel like I've had almost everybody over there, I feel like, from you guys on the show. And you guys have been really nice to me, meeting you guys down at Senate Slam and having a good time. And even meeting up with Braden came to my deer camp this year.
Yeah,
and all
man.
that stuff.
Yeah, I heard all about it. So it sounds like a great time.
Absolutely. I appreciate you coming on, man. Everybody, give the podcast a like and subscribe. Rate and review us. We're out there on every social media platform you can find us on, but GoWild is the one you need to check us out.
There we go.
You guys have a good rest of your week, and we'll see you again here next week.